Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing a very exciting video, at least for me, and we are going to be talking all about the Final Destination franchise, and I will be ranking every movie within the franchise, and also, because there's only 5 movies in total, I thought I would share my top 5 favorite death scenes. So I just want to put out a disclaimer now that this video will contain spoilers for, I think, all of the movies, so if you have not seen the franchise yet, and you don't want to be spoiled, just know this entire video is probably not for you. Unless you don't care, then, you know, keep watching, whatever. Before we get into the ranking though, I just want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different types of classes for creatives on topics such as photography, illustration, video, graphic design, and so much more. Anything you can think of, it's on Skillshare. You can explore new skills on there, strengthen existing passions, or just get lost in creativity. One class that I've discovered actually to be really helpful despite being in the game for over a decade is called YouTube Success Script, Shoot, and Edit with Marcus Brownlee, who is a YouTuber and a podcaster. I'm always looking for ways to improve my video creation, and learning about new perspectives can inspire me to try new things or learn techniques that I haven't learned in the past. Skillshare is meant just for learning, so that means there's absolutely no ads, and they're constantly launching brand new classes on so many different types of topics. Literally, there's something for everyone on Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So now let's get into the ranking, my personal ranking of Final Destination. Obviously, you can disagree with me all you want. I would love for you to rank the 5 movies down below in a comment. So starting in last place, we're gonna work our way from what I believe to be the worst Final Destination movies to the best. And in last place, we have the Final Destination, or Final Destination 4. This came out in 2009 and was filmed for 3D. It was the first in the franchise to be made for 3D. This movie, of course, follows college student Nick, who attends an auto race with his girlfriend and their friends, where of course he suffers a premonition of an accident on the racetrack that causes the stadium to collapse. What I find interesting is that this movie is actually the highest earning Final Destination. I'm gonna stumble over Final Destination so many times in this video, so we'll just bear with me. This is the highest earning FD movie in the franchise financially, but it actually received the worst reviews and ratings and reception from critics and fans for that matter. I think the biggest issue, in my opinion, that this movie has that is unlike any of the other movies in the franchise is that the opening scene and the premonition and everything is not as relatable as the other movies. You know, we have an airplane crash, we have a car pileup, we have a roller coaster, we have a bridge, then we have a raceway. How many people go to races? I don't know. I don't. I've never been. Maybe it's something that's really common and I'm just missing out on. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that the other 4 concepts of the other movies are a lot more popular than going to a racetrack. I just think there were many other things that they could have done with this movie, especially because the 5th one contains the bridge scene, so they could have easily come up with a different idea than a raceway, especially if they're filming it in 3D. I feel like they just had so many other ways that they could have taken it, and they decided on one of the lamest ones. However, that being said, I don't want to completely write off this intro, the opening scene and everything as unrealistic, because it is exactly like a situation that actually happened in 1955. This was the Le Mans Speedway disaster, which a multiple car wreckage sent large debris into the stands and ended up killing 84 people. So while it isn't a super relatable situation, not a lot of people can relate to a fear of going to the racetrack, it is something that actually did happen in real life, so it is kind of realistic. However, that's not my only issue with the movie, and that's not the only reason why it's ranked last. For some reason, the deaths in Final Destination 4, or the Final Destination, are just so over the top to me, and they are just more silly in this one. And I say that even for Final Destination standards, right? We watch these movies because of the extreme deaths, and you can write that off as death as an actual entity, so of course the deaths are going to be very over the top and unrealistic. But also, something about this movie is that it felt more like a comedy, and there were a lot of things about it that made it feel like it didn't belong in the franchise. Another issue I have with it is the only Final Destination movie that does not have Tony Todd in it in some way. So that alone makes it the worst one. This movie just feels too much like an outlier in the franchise. It's the only one to include a sex scene, which doesn't belong, I think. I mean, I'm willing to look past it, but it is the only one, so it just feels like a different type of movie. It's the shortest movie, running only 1 hour and 22 minutes. Obviously no Tony Todd, it's one of the only 3D ones. It's more of a comedy, and even the credit timing is different in the opening sequence than the other movies, so there's just nothing that is special in a good way about this movie that would make me want to rank it higher. So it definitely deserves to be in last place. Coming in at number 4 is Final Destination 5, another 3D one that came out in 2011. This is also the first Final Destination movie that came out in IMAX. So this follows Sam and his friends on their way to a retreat when their bus begins crossing the North Bay Bridge, and Sam suffers a premonition of the bridge collapsing. The opening sequence of this movie in particular is really the selling point for me and what makes it a really decent movie. It came in 4th because I'm only working with 5 movies to begin with, so although it should probably be rated higher, I just have a bias towards the other movies. But unlike the racetrack, driving over a bridge is something a lot of us do all the time, and I know for a fact that I'm not the only one that drives over a bridge and thinks, what if? Especially when I go to San Francisco, where there was actually a bridge collapse and everything like that. And this opening sequence is actually the longest opening sequence in the entire franchise at 4 minutes and 44 seconds. So it's just extra traumatic. So one of my somewhat issues, I don't think this is inherently a negative, but this movie was pretty much a cash grab because the 4th one did so well financially, they decided to make another one, despite the 4th one that was intended to be the last Final Destination movie. Obviously, it was called The Final Destination, so obviously it was meant to be the last one. And then they saw that they could make a lot of money on it, actually, after the other 3, and decided to make a 5th one, which I'm not entirely upset about because it did give us a better Final Destination movie, and it did work. This was the 2nd highest grossing movie in the entire franchise, and this was the only one to be heavily praised by critics, and I think a lot of fans were happy with this one as well, me included. I thought this one was a really decent addition to the franchise. So generally it had the most positive reception. It was the 2nd highest grossing movie in the franchise, so ultimately I think this was the most successful movie. However, it was still a cash grab, and they still made it just because they could and because they could make money on it. Like I said, I think it's my bias towards the 2nd movie that prevents me from ranking the 5th one higher, and just my bias towards the other ones anyway, because they are the better ones in my opinion. But I do think it deserves 4th because although I love the premonition scene and the fact that it was more similar in tone to the original, it was nice to break away from the comedic aspects that we got in the 4th one. This still had some of the worst death scenes, in my opinion, in the whole franchise. For example, the massage table death, the LASIK eye scene, I felt they were trying too hard with this one to be another tanning bed, logging truck, airplane, roller coaster, you know, like the ones that are infamous known from this franchise. I felt like the LASIK one was trying a little bit too hard and just unrealistic. I don't know, I just found these so unrealistic. But it also had one of my favorite death scenes as well. So I also really enjoy the fact that this movie is a prequel. I feel like that makes it really interesting, and it was such a good twist to witness because it was so unexpected, at least for me. And I like that they tried to keep this up and maintain continuity by using older technology. If you pay attention through this movie, it does in fact take place prior to the first one. So while I like this movie overall, I think it was one of the better Final Destination movies and definitely successful. It's kind of all over the place for me of the things that I liked and didn't like about it, so that's why it's ranked 4th. In 3rd place, we have Final Destination from 2000. This of course follows Alex and his fellow high school classmates on their overseas trip to Paris when he sees a premonition that the airplane they're all about to take off in explodes in midair. What I love about this movie is obviously it's the original, so we can't, you know, look past that. But the original concept for this movie by Jeffrey Reddick was actually supposed to be an episode for The X-Files. He had heard about a story of a woman who received a phone call from her mom and said, "Do not get on your flight. I just feel bad about it." And so so she didn't. She changed her flight, and the flight she had previously supposed to be on crashed. And Riddick thought, what if she was supposed to die on that flight? So he wrote up a little script, and the media company decided to push for him to actually make it a full movie instead of just an X-Files episode. And James Wong went on to say, we want to do for airplanes what Jaws did for sharks and swimming, which I feel like they were effective in doing, but I think it's more like logging trucks and tanning beds than the airplane. I feel really bad about putting the original in third place because I feel like it is such a classic movie and deserves to be ranked high, but out of 5 movies, I feel like third is, you know, doing pretty good. This, of course, has some of the best death scenes because they were the original death scenes. So my number 1 ranked death scene is from the original if you want to try to take a guess on what it is. And I honestly think that the premonition scene for this one specifically in the airplane is one of the most intense in the entire franchise because it is absolutely horrifying. They're all horrifying in their own way, but something about the airplane situation is just extra terrifying to me. In second place, we have Final Destination 2. This one came out in 2003, and in possibly the most horrific opening scene, this follows a group of college students on their way to celebrate spring break when Kim has a very detailed premonition of a deadly pileup caused by a logging truck. Probably one of the most infamous opening sequences in any of the Final Destination movies. I'm gonna take it back. I think this one's the most intense for me personally, and I'll tell you why this one is ranked so high. It's because it is one of the most effective ones. It is the most effective one, actually. The third one is just more entertaining. That's why it's ranked first, but we'll get to that. But the second one is the most effective scare-wise for me because I have had driving anxiety my whole life, and I am now past my phobia of it, but I still get driving anxiety. And what takes place in the beginning of this movie is literally my biggest fear in life. My biggest fear, how I've been convinced my whole life that I will die that way. So to see it is intense. This is, of course, a direct sequel to the first film. So we have a character of Clear Rivers in this movie as well. And this is actually the lowest grossing movie in the entire franchise, which makes me really sad because this one I think is so amazing and what I consider to be the hidden gem of the franchise. And although it does have its flaws, I consider it to be a really amazing sequel and a good premise for the second movie. I thought all the deaths were creative and pretty good. Again, they're kind of going a little more over the top as we go on throughout the franchise. And the reason why it's actually in second instead of first place is because I prefer what they did later on in the series and make each movie kind of its own standalone movie and not really too connected. Obviously, if you pay attention throughout all the movies, there's always connections throughout for each movie. And I honestly didn't really enjoy that they maintained the same character of Clear Rivers in the second one. I felt like it didn't add too much to the story and I could have really done without it. So that's another reason why it's in second. This is some of the worst acting, I think, in the franchise. Sorry. But I'm not too surprised about it being the lowest grossing movie. So finally, my number 1 favorite Final Destination movie, which I can now confidently say is Final Destination 3. Obviously it was 2 for a really long time, but I've just embraced that 3 is just the best of the entire franchise. I can't deny it anymore. This movie follows high school graduates at an amusement park to celebrate their graduation when Wendy, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, has a premonition of the roller coaster crashing. Also, if you don't have the Choose Their Fate DVD, like special edition DVD, I feel bad for you because even though it's super goofy, it's so much fun to take part in. It's just early 2000s goodness. Even though this came out in 2006, I still consider it pretty early 2000s. So Jeffrey Reddick did not return for the third movie, which I kind of felt was like a breath of fresh air because we got a different perspective and it was a really unique movie, like in comparison to the rest of the franchise. And this one was actually originally meant to be the first movie filmed for 3D, and I'm really happy that they didn't go with that because it just would have taken away from it. I feel like the fourth and the fifth one are just a little bit lower quality because they were filmed for 3D. Obviously it was the era, it was the time, it was the cool thing to do in cinema, but I'm not a huge fan of looking back. I don't feel like 3D movies really hold up well by today's standards. And of course this movie was the first one to be its own standalone movie instead of relating back to the other movies. And this one has the best acting in my opinion. Obviously this is one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I feel like this helped put her on the map. I know she was an actress before this and went on to do other stuff as well. I love when she's in horror. I think she's amazing. And I don't really have any death scenes in this movie that I think are are bad. I think they're all really, really decent. They were really thought out. They're all really gruesome in the best way possible, and they're realistic in the sense within the story. And I think that this one maintains to be the most iconic and memorable of the entire franchise, possibly next to the logging truck situation, which is why it's taken first place for me. I've watched this one the most and will continue to go back to rewatch this one. This is my most rewatched movie in the entire franchise. It is just, in my opinion, the best, hands down, Final Destination movie of the whole franchise. Also, I just want to say that Final Destination 6 is allegedly in the works. So we'll see. Let's hope and pray for some creativity, people. Okay, now let's get into my top 5 death scenes. Coming in at number 5, we have Candice, which is the famous gymnastics accident. In 4th place, we actually have 2 that are tied because I just couldn't decide which one I liked more, and that is Rory, killed by the flying barbed wire fence. He is split into 3. Not realistic at all. I don't think that would actually happen. I think it would just hurt a lot and maybe cut you open a little bit, but it would probably just knock you back. It wouldn't like slice you in half or in 3 pieces, but it's a fun death nonetheless. And then tied with Rory would have to be ERIN and the nail gun scene. I've always loved this scene. I thought the practical effects looked really good and it was really disturbing. In 3rd place, we have Ashley and ASHLYN in the tanning beds. You can't make a top 5 death scene list without putting the Ashleys in there because, I mean, the tanning bed scene is just so iconic and one of the most memorable death scenes hands down in the whole franchise. But personally, I love, in my 2nd place spot, Nora's death, which is decapitation by elevator. This one's ridiculous and so unrealistic. Like, I don't know if that would actually happen, if it would like snap your head off. Like, I don't think that would happen. But also the absolute helplessness of this woman in the elevator. She's supposed to avoid the man with hooks. She sees the man with hooks. She stays in the elevator. She can't get her hair out of a hook. I just don't see how this would be possible at all. The man doing absolutely nothing. So not realistic. But again, it's ranked high because it's a fun one. And finally, my favorite death scene of all time, hands down, comes from the original, and that is Valerie's, which I put in parentheses how everyone died in the other deaths in my ranking. This one I didn't put anything because her death is just so tragic. It's so drawn out, it's so long, it's torture, it's horrible and horrific, and that's why I love it. You just see it gradually happen, and it's not like a situation with the elevator or the gymnastic accident, which is like immediate. It like takes time and you don't know what's actually going to be the thing that kills her. All you know is that death is there in her house and going to kill her, and you just don't know what is going to take her out. So let me know what your favorite death scenes are in the entire Final Destination franchise, and also what your rankings would be of these movies. Also, I will be doing a tier list video of all of the death scenes in this franchise. I know I just told you my top 5, so you kind of have a little spoiler for the tier list video, the ranking video, but hopefully it's still exciting because obviously there's dozens of more deaths to talk about. So hopefully you're excited for that. That'll be in a little while, but yeah, let me know your thoughts about all of this. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.